Hey there. So we're going to do a quick walkthrough of a concept using the swept boss feature. So I'm going to share my screen right in here somewhere. Sure. Okay. And then I'm going to click into my SolidWorks workspace, and I'm going to pull up the full file so you can see the end result, and then we're going to roll back through and I'll just talk about some of the things that I did. So I'm going to try to cut these down to size a bit. I know that an hour is just too much for the walkthrough really to be of much value to you. So I'm going to start from the end and work backwards. So we've talked about the rollback feature, which you can just pull that bar up from the very end, this, or no matter where it is, select a feature, this little black arrow. If you right click, you'll have all these options of things to do to items in your tree. At the very top, you'll see rollback. So that'll roll back that in its entirety. So here is where we started. So the sweep one is showing a swept boss feature that began with this. And actually, I'll go back one step farther and show you my reference sketch. Again, it is not great, but we're gonna show you what you can do with a 60-second sketch. So I'm not sure where this 29-inch dimension came from. 18 inches is kind of the standard for a seat height. So we'll work from 18 inches. And then maybe 18 inches for a little planter box in the back, and then maybe a display. So this is just a rough idea, something to get started. And I know I want some curvature to the seat component. And maybe it's more than one seat, maybe it's a couple of different seats kind of in a swept array. So it has a little bit of character, something more exciting than just a simple extruded bench. So with that in mind, I sketched this as the general profile after scaling the sketch to approximately 18 inches for the seat height. So, you usually want to find something to base some reference measurement to scale your sketch and then start building from there. I also have these angled just a bit, the seat for water runoff and the sides, just so that it doesn't look so rectilinear and blocky. And also if this is a big like molded plastic part, needs a little bit of draft so you can get it out of the mold. So that's why I've constrained some of these at 85 degrees and then maybe the seat at 99. Now it's not required, but something I like to do just to build in a little character. So there you go. So we're going to exit that sketch. The next thing I need to do, so that is going to be the section of my sketch. I'm going to hide our reference item, our reference sketch. I don't want to hide all sketches. There we go. So there's my reference sketch. Now I want to sweep that. And what that's going to do is give it some directional movement, either right or left of the sketch. Again, I've sketched that on the right plane. So that's kind of my center, or where I'm starting from right now. So what I did next was I first started creating a circle just to kind of get an idea of where that curvature was starting. You can also just start with a tangent arc and maybe put a straight line here and a tangent arc off of it. These dimensions aren't really set in stone. I like to define them so that later, if I want to adjust some things, I can. One thing I wanted to make was maybe like a couple of sketch segments and knowing that they were going to be about 6 feet long, maybe in total. So just looking at the scale, that seemed about right to me. So I sketched those two and defined the radius of this one at 50 and the diameter of this big circle at 325. So it starts out gentle and then ramps a little bit faster. As you can see, that curves a little bit faster. So just somewhere to start. This is a very early concept, so I was just taking some creative liberty. One thing in the sweep feature you might find interesting is in the options, so you can always right click and edit feature to see any of the things that you've done to get this sweep. So a lot of options down here. This main option is kind of interesting. So keep normal consistent or follow path. And you can quickly see, I'm going to hit the space bar and top view. You can quickly see how much that changes your result in that sweep. You're still sweeping that same path, so the endpoint for the front of your bench will be the same between the two, but look at the difference. This one almost lops it off at, you know, a 45-degree angle, 60-degree angle. So just try out a couple of different things. I like the follow normal constant most of the time, but see what works for you. There are always features here or options here to explore. And I don't want to merge this with, I guess this is my first body, so I can't merge it. Never mind. Never mind. So now we have kind of a swept bench. It has some contour to it. I like that. And then I'm going to start adding in fillets for even a little more character. Great thing about the fillet tool and this being a solid bench is I can select all of these edges. And so long as in my fillet parameters, I have multi-radius fillet selected, I can go back individually after the fact. And because I have Instant 3D, that tool enabled, you can adjust dimensions on the fly. So if I click fillet, it'll bring up all those fillets that are part of that same fillet command, and I can adjust any of these. So this is 1.5, 3, 1.5, 1.5. And I can adjust any of those at any time. So within that same fillet feature, I've made all of those. Next is looking back at my sketch. You see that it was kind of like a hollow bench. So from the side, maybe it's hollow. So I wanted to represent that here. So I'll hit that again. And the shell feature is really, really satisfying, really fun. And what you'll do is, and that is in the solid features tool, toolbar, shell. And you will select all of these surfaces that you would expect to see, you know, that edge detail being represented. Can think of a better way to say that, but obviously you don't want to select any of the front of your bench because you don't want that to be hollow, just the underside and the sides. So select those. I've picked 1 inch for a parameter. I'm thinking this is like a roto-molded or a, you know, molded plastic piece. So I got that. One thing to note is if you're shelling something, let's imagine you shelled it. You'll drag fillet below, and you can sometimes drag your features around. If you had shelled it and now you want to go back and fillet it, I would not personally want to spend the time to do each individually, the interior and the exterior fillets. So this is one of those order of operation questions that comes up, like, well, you know, is there a better way to do this? There definitely is. So if you fillet before you shell, then so long as your radii is large enough, that will kind of populate through that shell feature. So I think that's helpful. I also wanted to round off these edges. I think it just gives it a little more of a cleaned up look. I'm going to hide the sketch. You can hide individually sketches if you want to look at them or don't. Fine. Now I think I want to split the bench into maybe 3 pieces. So using a sketch on the top plane, I almost want to think of, okay, where would I put slices? So you're creating just some simple geometry to slice through your product or item. So I have 3 equidistant sections, you know, marked by 2 lines right here. And in the features panel, it's not there, I don't think automatically, so split, and we'll get to move face later. Split, you have to bring in on your own. So you'd search split up in this commands bar and then bring it down to your features toolbar. In order to use split, you select your trim tool first. So you'd select that sketch that you drew to slice through your item, your solid body, and then pick the resulting bodies. You can have it, you know, delete one. So if you only wanted the first and the third one, you can have it consume those. But really, I just want it cut into 3 equal little bench parts. And again, I'm going to hide that sketch now that I'm done with it. I don't really need to see it. So I like that. Now I want to, you know, round off the edges so that they look nice also. So I'm going to fillet it on this far bench. You can only add a fillet or a chamfer feature to a single solid body at a time. So I'm having to do this one by one. So now this one gets fillets. And then the last one is these edges right here on this center bench. Now, we talked about sketching on surfaces and on planes, so you can do either one here. I ended up creating a new plane just by clicking here and reference geometry, created a plane so that I could sketch on it, but you can sketch on any of these. The plane does let you, I think, maybe do a couple things that are different. So if you, these are three different solid bodies. So I wanted to create a plane that it's the top of all of those solid bodies. So it's not going to constrain me to any of those bodies. Next, I wanted to cut through each of these to make a little slot for those planter boxes to nest into. And right now, since I'm in sketch mode, actually, I'm going to get out of perspective. So we haven't looked really at the display modes, but there are a bunch here. You can play around and see how you like to work. Real view graphics is nice and shiny. Ambient occlusion adds some interesting shadows, but those do take a little bit of RAM probably to, continue to map that as you make changes. So if you're having trouble and your computer is slow, I would tab off of real view, tab off of ambient occlusion. And for this, since I'm sketching from the top, I want to get perspective off as well. So that I know what I'm doing. I can kind of see it a little more clearly. So I selected these edges to offset them 2 inches, sorry, to the interior. So the offset entities tool is here. So that's how I'm getting the geometry from this face in general. I think I click that face and then offset geometries, and it'll offset nicely in there. Same for here and here. So then you have those three contours, and you can see they are contours, they are solid. So they're going to work nicely for a cut extrude form because they are purple. So you can see that they're going to function well for a cut extrude because they're a closed contour. So cut extrude, and you can cut extrude through a single body, all these bodies. So you can see in that feature scope is how you determine if there are other things underneath there you didn't want to cut through. You would not want those shown in the feature scope panel. So you can define what you want it to cut through or not. Now I'm thinking for that display panel in the back, I probably do want to move that forward a little bit. So rather than mess with my sketch here, where I have a 2-inch offset all the way around, that's nice. I want to use the Move Face tool, another one you'll have to search for and bring onto your features toolbar, but it is fantastic. You will really like using this. So it's Move Face. And by selecting, you can do this on multiple bodies. So it is a little confusing in SolidWorks what you can and cannot do to multiple bodies, whether you have to do it to a single body at a time. Move Face you can use across a couple different bodies at a time. So I've just selected that face back there, which I want to nudge in just a little bit to give room for a display panel on the back without disrupting everything else that I have going on. Now, would I use this if I was using it to send something to production, I probably wouldn't do Move Face this early on. It's fine to use, but then if you change this constraint, this 2-inch offset, now you've got to remember that you also did a Move Face for 2.5 inches. So when those things stack up, and there are decisions that are made that kind of have cascade effects, you might want to be a little more diligent about creating that geometry, that offset geometry to support your needs. So, but for exploring, Move Face is totally fine and very, I think, really effective. So now I want those rounded off. So I'm going to create little planter boxes, but I don't want any sharp, hard, unfriendly looking edges. And I'm going to turn perspective back on because I just like it. And then I don't really need that planter box plane showing, so I'm going to hide that. So fillet 6. Fillet 7. Now I'm going to show you with fillet 8, one cool trick. And that is, so I have 4 items here to fillet. I don't really want to select a bunch of stuff and rotate the model around to select them all. So if you open the fillet feature and select one edge, if you have similar edges on your part, this is I think it's like a selection helper, selection manager. You can select different options and it will kind of look across your solid body or surface body and look for things that you might want to fillet. So if you're filling that one, it knows you might want to fillet the rest. So I'll show you that one more time. So items to fillet, I'm just going to select that. And then right up here, it pops up and it'll kind of in purple show you the other ones that it's suggesting you might want to fillet. And I do. It's much simpler, especially on complex geometry where you're filleting a lot of things at once. So now onto planter boxes. I'm going to do an extrude, but a thin extrude. So I did that by sketching first on the underside, right down here. I selected the edge, and I did that by selecting the edge here. So on the inside there, when you hover over and you see it in orange, that means it's an edge that you can select. So I selected that cutaway edge, and I'm just going to show you on this part how I selected it. You can select tangency or loop. Tangency works great for these. Loop sometimes is what you need. So just try to select all of those, and the select tangency should wrap around all of that. And then you will convert entities from that. So you're using your solid body geometry to then create a new sketch entity. And when you hit extrude thin, you'll see a couple things pop up. So I'm going to get out of the sketch and open the feature. So I can show you what that looks like. And extrude is actually not shown as a separate item. It is right in the extruded boss tool. So if you go to extrude, extrude thin is something you can really only get to by first going to extruded boss and then selecting that thin feature down here. So I told it I wanted it 10 inches long for the planter box, and then down here in thin feature, 0.15 inches. I might want to do 0.25 inches actually. Just get it a little bit thicker. It's nice and sturdy. So now you'll see it's hollow, but that is okay, because now what we're going to do is cap it by, again, sketching on, I think I just picked, this face here, this little edge. So basically the flat edge that we want to sketch onto to cap that over. So again, I did convert entity. So right click, I selected tangency, and it gave me all of that, that contour. I converted entities, and then it shows up in black because it is all constrained based on prior geometry. So I did that for each of these. And again, you can do this in a single boss extrude, which is very nice. And I'll exit our sketch and look at what we did in the feature. And again, so knowing that I made it 2.25 inches thick, that's the thickness that I made this little bottom cap. I did click merge result, and then in the feature scope down below, you pick all 3 of those little planter boxes that you wanted to cap, and it'll know just because there is shared geometry there that this cap goes with this box, this with the other, so they'll still show up as 3 individual planters, but each now with a cap. So there's the first one, second one, third one. So great thing here is if I wanted to change this fillet way up there in the tree to 2 inches, that populates across the, any feature that is in front of it, or sorry, I guess after it. So that's the nice thing about building geometry off of other geometry. While it can lead to some complications, if you do that, then you don't have to update everything. So you're not updating this fillet. You're not updating a whole bunch of stuff later on. So let's check out these. Oh yeah, so the next thing I wanted to do was make the bottoms of these a little bit friendlier. And again, a fillet is not something that you can do to multiple bodies at a time. Kind of a bummer. But just for simplicity, this is not how we do it in the real world, because they would have different fillets because they are inside and outside, but I'm not going that deep with it on this one. So I'll just leave that as a 2-inch radius on the bottom for each of those. So I selected that this lower surface and then the interior surface, and it filleted both the inside and the outside just fine. So it does look like, I could probably go a little bit farther or a little bit larger on my fillet. Sorry, I'm getting close to the screen, just kind of looking at some of the decisions I made. So you can see that how it changes, the different geometry looks with, this is a 1-inch fillet, this is a 1-inch fillet, but this looks a little more generous because it's not a nice or a wide angle opening. It's kind of a 90-degree. So anyhow, Now I'm going to build that back display panel. So this is our back, and see we have room because we moved that face. So I'm going to do a surface extrude right here. So I offset that by 1 inch. And at the time, for whatever reason, just because there is some jumbled geometry here, it wasn't mapping nicely. So I deleted out that center portion and then just dropped 2 tangent arcs in there to kind of make up the difference. That's a great thing with SOLIDWORKS is you can kind of tell, you know, it tells you early and often if there is a problem. It will get mad and red and tell you it's not going to work. So you do have it almost looking out for future you, so that you make things nice and clean and easy for SOLIDWORKS to execute later on. So why am I doing a surface extrude here? I didn't want to then have to offset this. The capping sometimes on these sometimes works great with an offset, sometimes doesn't. So I just wanted to give you one more option here, and that is to extrude a surface and then to quickly turn that into a solid with a feature called thicken. So I want this display panel moved up a little bit. So I use move copy body to move it up the y-axis, 6 inches is what I decided. And then thicken, which you'll find up here. I think it may or may not, actually, no, it's in surfaces. So thicken is in the surfaces panel because you can only thicken a surface. It results in a solid body, but you can only thicken it if it's first a surface body. So thicken is right there. And you select this surface body, use the thicken tool, and then you can define the thickness of it and then which direction you want it to thicken. So it can be all out the back, out the front, or centered using the surface that you created as kind of the center line. And each of these does, you know, when you do a tool like this, a lot of times the body that you had, the surface body, is consumed, which I think is good because it helps it from being really cluttered here. So now I know that I have a surface body. What I can see is if I roll it back, now I can see it in my history tree and bodies manager over here. Now it goes back to showing me that I have a body in place. But that immediately goes away when I thicken it. It's no longer a surface body, so it's not showing me that geometry, which I find helpful for my brain space. Now I want to split that. So using the same sketch that we used to split the bench, which is this one way back here, bench split. Use that same one to split this panel into 3. So if it was a single unit versus, you know, all 3 together, use that. And again, in that resulting bodies panel selector, you would click 1, 2, 3. Yes, I want to split these, not the bench. It's already split. And move on. So back to our move face tool. I love the move face tool. So first I hid this middle one. I want a little space, a little gap in between. So I selected both the exterior edges and the interior edge of my first and third panel just to get, you know, that brought in a little bit. So 1 inch per side. And the reason I did those first is because you can't really see the middle one. It's sharing edges with the other 2. So I hid those first, or hit move face, and then edit the feature. So I'm still using that same feature. I don't have to create a whole new feature. Then going back and selecting those 2 edges, or sorry, faces on my middle panel. And then it's showing those here as well. So I guess another thing in there, offset, translate, and rotate. Those are all options for the move face. This one we used offset because I just want to tab it in a little bit. I don't want to translate it so much. And you can see if you try it out, what different appearance that gives you or what that does for you. So just showing you that. And the boss extrude, I wanted to, give some little support legs. There certainly is a way to use a pattern feature to get a really consistent and really nice mapping of all those features. I'm going to take perspective off again. So if you hit spacebar, I've done this a couple of times, it brings up this cube, and that cube, you can select any of those faces to view it from that angle. So if you want kind of a 3/4 view, 3/4 view, you'd select this edge, 3/4 upper view, sorry, top view. So use spacebar and it'll bring up all of those options for your orientation of your view. So for that boss extrude, yeah, you could certainly pattern these, but I'm not being that precise. This is just an early idea, an early concept. So there's no reason at this point to be defining everything. I just want those to coincide with where the panels are so I can show them being held up. So at least it looks like I've thought about how those might be held in space. And I'm gonna hide that sketch again for the bench split. You don't have to rename any of these. Sometimes it does help because if everything is sketch 2, sketch 3, down to sketch 36, then you kind of just have to roll your mouse over it to select it to see what's going on. So up to you. But I don't name all of my sketches. So split line. If this was a display panel, I wanted it to maybe have just more of a frame look to it than just static. So came to the front view and did that dang perspective. I really love the perspective because it looks better when you're trying to get a feel for it. But as soon as you go back into sketch mode, it gets a little wonky. So I'm sketching on the front plane here. And I selected all 3 of these surfaces, the surfaces on these bodies, pardon me. So you select all of this and then hit offset entities. Actually convert entities will give you these outer this outer geometry. I selected all of that and then made it construction geometry and then offset it to the inside 2 inches. So and that just gives you a nice offset, a nice frame. And split line. I didn't want to split this into separate bodies because the back of it I didn't want split out as a separate piece. I just wanted there to be you know, a different material I could apply or color I could apply to stand in for posters or you know some place to put media. So rather than split as a solid body feature, I'm choosing split line for this one. And that you can find in features, curves, and split line. So there are a lot of things you can do with curves to give your geometry a little bit of refinement. You can break surfaces so then you can add things later to them in a rendering. So split line is kind of the simplest. If you think you can project a curve onto something very similar to Rhino, that is what I would use. So split line, select that sketch, and then select all of those faces. And even though they're different bodies, because each of these sketch entities or contours is consolidated, it's hitting, you know, just one of these, it should work just fine. So there's that. Yep, so now we can assign a different color to it, give it a little bit of depth and character. Now, I just wanted to round off these top edges because they looked a little unfriendly. I don't know, just for fun. There we go. And I think maybe for the last piece, which actually I don't know that this is going to be in the file that I have just uploaded, but I might just put just a tiny radius on the exterior edge. And it should map really nicely because all of these are tangent edges. But I do want to show you one thing, and that is the face fillet. So that was the edge fillet tool. Now we're looking at face fillet, and you pick one face. So you're almost looking at picking one face here, one face here. So you're telling it the 2 faces where you want there to be a fillet between those where they meet. So in the first box, face 1, in the second box, any of the other faces along the product. And I'm not sure if you could really tell the differences here, but chord width, if I maybe zoom in back and forth between these two, symmetric is really just going to give us a 1/2 inch fillet. And I'm not sure if it is that's the maximum of the fillet or yeah, I'm not really sure how that's defined. So that 1/2 inch doesn't seem to be consistent in how it treats it, which is why I usually pick chord width. And what that means is anywhere along this you measure, that's going to be a 1/2 inch from point to point. To me, it looks a lot better, a lot cleaner, more consistent, and that's just what I like. So if you don't want to have these on your edges, that's also fine. But I think for, you know, for rendering, it makes it look a little more friendly, a little more detailed and touched up. So that's something that I would add here. And again, we're face fillet and right down here, chord width. It's almost like SolidWorks knows exactly what you want to do, and it is not the the first option that SolidWorks wants for you. If you do select a face first, so you can see I selected this end face on this last bench. If you select a face and then hit fillet, it will automatically enter the face fillet mode. So that's a way that you can at least jumpstart the process. Symmetric, I want it to be chord width though. So there we go. And that is face fillet. Again, I might do something similar for this, just to have a little refinement on it. So you can do the front and the back at the same time, but none of these other bodies. So I'll just do a simple edge fillet because it's fairly small and I don't think the face fillet option really would do much for me. So I'll just do those quickly. And that is it. I guess I didn't show you how to assign colors in here. So let's do that. So for these faces, this is part of a larger solid body, but once it's broken out as a separate face, you can select that, right click on it, and this little first globe ball will say appearances. You can also copy appearance or paste appearance, but first we want to look at applying an appearance to the face. So you can apply it to the face. I don't like to apply it to features themselves because as you roll back and down the up or down the tree, then your selections or your display modes can change. So I don't particularly like that. Once I get to a good place, I feel good about it. If later on in the project, a lot of times I will do it to a body because I don't expect it to change much. So let's see, right here, we'll go back and face. And that'll bring up a properties manager over here. You can scroll around, see what you want to apply. These are just simple colors. You can also map some textures on here. We'll get into that much later on. But for now, you can just pick a color and call it good. We're not rendering these out really, just trying to get a rough idea of size and scale and overall form and proportion. So I will leave it at that with this one. Alrighty, thanks.